At the time of the Shrewsbury trials and that, the building industry had the highest fatality rate of any industry going. It was equivalent actually to that of the mining industry and the farming industry put together.
Working conditions were appalling. You know, men were being killed on building sites, still are, because of shortcuts, because of employers who want to do the thing as cheaply as possible.
Even on the major sites, you'd be very, very lucky if you could find a toilet. You were very, very lucky, or almost impossible, if you got soaked at 8 o'clock in the morning, somewhere to go and dry your clothes. So you worked in them clothes all day. And part of the thing that we went on strike for was better health and safety, and we achieved that. We got a shorter working week, and we got a few extra quid in our wage packets.
Never before had virtually nearly all the claims that we'd gone out for, any trade union gone out for, had been met.
We were on official strike, we had a ballot. 6 months after the strike was over, Des and others, and Ricky Tomlinson and other lads, got the 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning knock. The lads were tried at mould on minor charges of someone kicking a ball down, pushing a cement mixer over. Maybe it was true, and I was at the court, and they were fined £10, £15, £20. Half of them were found innocent. But the conspirators against them weren't happy with that. They wanted someone sent to jail for a long time.
It's a very, very difficult industry to organise because we're so fragmented. And that's why the government of the day picked on us, because they knew we didn't have the strength of the miners or the dock workers.
The establishment had learned from the imprisoning of people from the Industrial Relations Act. And therefore, having been defeated on that, and it was a major, significant defeat, that they had to re-establish their authority. They chose to do it in a press build-up, nothing to do with the Industrial Relations Act, on a question of intimidation, on a question of violence, and in fact they ended up doing the Shrewsbury lads under the Conspiracy Act, which is a very difficult piece of legislation to prove your innocence.
But at the court, there was a hung jury, and they lasted, I think, 2 days before they could come out with a verdict. And in that time, somebody, a court official, was supposed to have gone in and advised them that, look, don't worry, you're very close to arriving at a verdict. Don't worry if you find these lads guilty, because they'll only get a fine and the union will pay it and you can go home.
They came into the room where the jury was and they said, reach a decision as quickly as you can. If you don't reach it now, you'll be here over Christmas. When they said the 3 years and the 3 years and the 3 years, it added up to 9, I actually almost collapsed because I thought, you know, my children, 9 years. And then he said to run concurrently. That didn't mean anything to me either.
The foreman of the jury stormed out of the court and slammed the door, and the judge ordered them back. And another member of the jury was in tears.
The day after the jailings, the 20th of December, this is an example of what we put up with before that as well.
The News of the World absolutely slaughtered him, and we got the most horrendous threatening letters. Not only threatening him, but threatening me and the children as well.
Des was passed from pillar to post, probably was in more jails than murderers were.
Well, the idea of moving them frequently was so that demonstrations couldn't be held outside the prisons because nobody knew where they were. You know, they might be in Leicester one day and somewhere else the next. You know, it was hard on all of us, particularly the children. You know, it's hard for children going to school and, you know, the other kids saying your dad's in prison. They didn't know that he was innocent of any crime. At one point, when he was in prison, he'd been on hunger strike, and they had him carrying metal doors up and down stairs, obviously trying to, well, in my mind, trying to kill him.
They were responsible for the death of Desi Warren, because Desi Warren died from drug-induced Parkinson's, from the liquid cosh and other things that they gave him when he was in prison.
It wasn't a police plot. It wasn't an employer's plot. The state was involved at the highest level. Everybody knew. 2 Labour Party conferences, 2 TUC conferences, Amnesty International adopted me as a prisoner of conscience. Everybody knew that the Shrewsbury Pickets had been set up.
There was a conspiracy, but the conspiracy was between the government and the employers. And what was the purpose of charging and convicting these building workers? The purpose was retribution. That's what it was all about. Retribution for the fact of the successful miners' strike in 1972. Retribution for the fact that 1 million workers had gone on strike to spring the Pentonville dockers who'd been imprisoned in 1972. And above all, it was retribution for the fact that the trade union movement stood up and resisted the Industrial Relations Act of 1971 and made it unworkable.
But the country then was hell-bent on them getting appeal. But in the meantime, they're rotting in jail. He comes out on appeal, but there's a new movement going on. It's to get Labour in power. And the call went out to everyone. Labour in, and the Pickets will get the Pickets out. After Labour did get in, then we approached Roy Jenkins and asked him what he was going to do about these lads who've been wrongly victimised and charged with conspiracy and sent to jail. And his father, by the way, was jailed as a minor in 1926. You would have thought he'd had a big heart for these lads, but he didn't. He said, British justice being what it is today, if they're innocent, they will be found so, and if guilty, so be it. And he just walked away.
We actually spent more time in jail under the Labour Party than we did under the Tories, and I think that speaks volumes.
Where there is one member of a union who is now partially blind based on the fact that he was kicked off a scaffold.
If the gallery cannot keep quiet, I will have it cleared. If this goes on, I have no alternative, but the police will have to come in.
The Shrewsbury Pickets were fighting for better pay for our members. The end of casualisation and safer sites. And today the construction workers face the same battle. Those found guilty, in my opinion, weren't they criminals, they were political prisoners. And that's the way I would say the majority of UCAP members felt at that time. But I've got to say that leadership in my union at that time had a lot of feelings. And you know, that I'm one of the first to hold their hand up to say that yeah, we did fail at that time, and we want to create a position where we can reverse the faults that happened in the political leadership of UCAP.
I'll have a good drink, Vincent. I'll have a good drink.
When I look back, it's so unfair how they suffered. You know, so unfair, particularly Dennis. You know, in his weakened state, the things that they made him do. You know, deliberately to crack it. They wouldn't have cracked him anyway. He was much too strong for that. He was a man of principle. And that's how I'll always remember him. I'm here because I'm seeking justice, not only for my husband, but that is the main concern, but also for myself and my family, because it completely smashed us.
And I'd like my name cleared, not for my sake, but for my children's sake, and more importantly, for my grandchildren's sake.
It will happen. I know it will happen at some point. If it's now, it'll be later. It will happen. It happened for the Toll Puddle martyrs. It will happen for us.